Welcome back to the hallowed halls here at the Apartment Academy. School is back in session. We at the Academy are the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast, featuring insights from industry leaders, investors, vendors, and technology providers. So if you invest in multifamily real estate or you're involved in day-to-day on-site operations of apartment buildings, well, this is your academia. This is your school of higher learning and improved NOI. Today's podcast was with Cindy Clare, who is COO of Bell Partners and has been, at a high level operating multifamily buildings, multifamily companies for a long time. And she's got some really interesting perspectives on how COVID has changed the industry, some of the difficulties involved and risks involved in managing apartment buildings. And I really enjoyed speaking to her. So let's kick things off with Professor Clare. All right. Well, Professor Clare, welcome to the Apartment Academy today. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. So, Cindy, you are the Chief Operating Officer at Bell Partners, which is a company with nearly 50 years of experience in managing buildings. You have over 220 properties, 65,000 units across much of the Northeast, and then spanning into the West and some of the South. About 2/3 of which those are third-party managed, which really makes Bell Partners one of the larger third-party operators here in the country. So that's amazing. Tell us a little bit about your journey, Cindy, to get here. You know, your 3 years at Bell Partners it's been relatively brief in comparison to the time you spent with your prior companies.
Yes. So I have I've had 3 other jobs in my career. I tend to stay for a while. So I'm a little unusual in that sense. I started right out of college in what was supposed to be, quote unquote, a job till I found my real job. And when I started with an owner manager in the DC area, they offered me a full-time position and I ended up staying, learning the business, became a regional manager, did lease ups, did, a little bit of everything, and then was recruited into a role as a vice president with another local company. And I spent 10 years there running the residential division for that company. And then was recruited to Kettler, where I spent 13 years as the president of Kettler Management until I came to Bell as the COO. So most of my career was in the DC market. It was largely regional, although Kettler had started expanding into other markets. So the opportunity to come to Bell on a national platform, and ironically, we do have a lot of stuff in the Mid-Atlantic and in the Northeast, but we started in North Carolina, so we have a huge presence in the Southeast as well. Our largest market is North Carolina. Our second largest market is Florida. And then the DC metro area is the third. And then, as you said, we're out on the West. So the opportunity to go to a national company in a COO role was very enticing. And it's been, so far, 3 years, it's been great.
Well, still early in for you though. So, but yeah, considering your tenure in other places, but you have the classic, this is the classic example of one of the things that's wonderful about multifamily as a career. And I'm sure this must be pointed out all the time, but it's classic to see somebody who really started in the trenches, at the property, at the site level, and has worked their way up to being the COO of again, one of the largest third-party operators in the country. And I think that's one of the things that's really wonderful.
Very true. Although just to be clear, I didn't start on site because when I started my career in the dark ages, people didn't get promoted from the site level. But I did start in an administrative role. And then I worked on site on my own because I wanted to learn about it, and then was promoted into a regional role. But you're absolutely correct that most people start on a site level and work their way up. And it's a great way to learn the business. And in most cases, those of us that have been around for a long time didn't know anything about property management. We kind of fell into it. What is great to see today is the number of people that are choosing this as a career, with the colleges and the universities that now offer specialties in property management, or so many people now getting degrees in real estate. It's really opened up the industry a lot more. And so it's very exciting to see it, but you're absolutely right. getting that foundation at the site level helps you be successful as you move up in an organization. And there's a clear career path, and people, you know, you can do it. Many of us have.
Yeah, and a strong bias for companies to hire within and raise people up through that, which is also, I think, wonderful to see. So given that, and given that you spent nearly 10 years in that regional sort of role, you have definitely seen the challenges that face apartment operators, again, in the trenches level, I'll say. So talk to us a little bit about what you think some of the largest challenges are in managing multifamily buildings.
The biggest challenge is people. I mean, think about our business. It's a people business. So it's not only, we joke and say our job would be so easy if we didn't have to deal with people. Well, because it's not just your employees, you've got residents, you have clients. So everywhere, everything we touch, besides the real estate, is people oriented. You're dealing with someone's home. You have a lot of staff on site. You have institutional investors or individual investors that are all very interested. So you have multiple customers, basically, and it's all around the people. And the more you move up in an organization, the more you spend time on people versus spending time on the assets. I mean, the physical asset and the day-to-day operations of a property have their own complexities, but to some extent, they're fairly straightforward. It's the people piece of it that can make or break you in performance and in the and how your property runs. So whether that's your residents paying their rent, whether that's your staff and how they're treating your residents, how is the property performing, because that makes an impact on your clients, how you deal with your clients, it all revolves around people. So what makes up, I think, our job the most fun is all the people you get to interact with, but it's also the most challenging piece of the business as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we say we're a people business, I think I would say people outside the business often go right to, well, that's because you're dealing with people, right? The residents on site. But you mentioned something really important, which is there's a lot of staff. I mean, in particular in this business, for example, if you have $1 million worth of property management fees, just third-party management fees, you may have 50 people or more in the field deployed to generate those fees. And because they're very thin margins, right, on the operations side. And so that is a challenge to manage that number of people with sort of limited overhead to do so.
Right. No, that's exactly right. When you think about, a 300 unit property, if it's a garden property or a mid-rise property that doesn't have a front desk, you're going to, on average, have 6 people at that property. And then if there is a 24-hour desk, you may have 9, 10, 12 people at a property. So then you multiply that by 100 properties and think about what those numbers are. And it very quickly becomes you're spending a lot of time on the people side of it. And again, those people, the people make or break the property as far as how your residents feel. You think about maintenance, you think about the customer service side of it. All of that impacts your residents and makes them make the decision whether they're staying, are they happy, are they going, today, are they going on social media and complaining about you or celebrating you? It's generally about people.
Yeah. So how does Bell Partners address that? If people are so important, how do you do a good job? Let's start with talking about internally. Well, we can talk about both, but start with internally, keeping employees happy, keeping them engaged. It's a difficult business. We can talk about that. This is not an easy career choice in many respects, and we can talk more about that. But so what does Bell Partners do that's special or unique that you think that helps you guys succeed in that area?
Well, I think a lot of it is the connection with our people and the culture. You have to create a strong culture. You have to create a vision for people to follow. They need to know what our goals are and where we're going. And we I think, do a very good job of creating that culture and that vision. We set out a strategic plan. We let everybody know what that plan is. We have our mission and our core values, and people can recite them. and they know what we're trying to accomplish. And so everybody's committed and rowing in the same direction. So I think that's the first step. And then the second piece of it, which has been particularly hard this year, is the connection piece. One of my favorite things to do is be out on site. I want to go visit the teams. If I'm making decisions for this company, I need to know what's going on the site level to make those decisions. I joke with people all the time and say, I don't sit in my office every day and figure out what I can do to make your life miserable. I'm really trying to figure out how we make things better. I know sometimes it probably doesn't feel that way, but part of that is you have to get out and see the properties and talk to the teams. And so we are very focused on everybody being out and, touching the real estate, touching the teams. That connection is really important. And so this past year with the pandemic, finding ways to connect, whether that's through video, through video messages, through written messages, and now we're starting to get back out. Our regionals have always been on the properties, but getting now, as we get more comfortable, getting more people out, I've started traveling again. I think that's important. I think you need to be able to tell people how much you appreciate what they're doing and hear what their concerns are. And I think that creates the culture. It is a hard job. And, every single person on a site makes a difference, whether that's the person cleaning up the grounds, to the site manager, to the leasing people, to the maintenance people. They all play a critical role in what happens at those properties.
Now, I totally agree. I think that's spot on. However, we have been forced over the last 12 months or so, we have been forced as an industry to contemplate how we can maintain some level of interaction with our teams on site without physically being there. Now that we're thankfully maybe moving out of that necessity, were there things learned during this period of having to engage remotely that you think will persist, even though now we can return and start seeing things people in person?
Absolutely. I think it's a balance. I don't think that the Zoom calls, the team calls, all of this video, like we're doing right now, goes away, because I think it helps us connect more often with people. So we've learned, virtual reality training, virtual training, not just webinars or online training, but actual virtual training, virtual onboarding. And I think a lot of those things are here to stay because they allow us to move more quickly to onboard someone or to get someone trained. And then you can supplement with the in-person. And I don't think it will ever take the in-person away completely, but we have found that we can do more things virtually, which gives us more opportunities to connect. And then the training piece of it, which is another big piece when you're talking about all of these people, is getting them trained, giving them the tools to do the job. And so I do think that we've learned a lot, and we can talk about it on the leasing side. A lot of the tools that we've rolled out, this industry is not one that moves quickly when it comes to technology. When you think about how fast technology has moved and what other industries are doing. But last year we were forced to really embrace technology on a whole different level. And that's made a huge difference, I think. And a lot of those changes are here to stay. And we figured out that we could roll things out. It was a little bumpy, but we could roll things out a lot faster than we thought we could.
Well, you touched on something else I think was important I wanted to ask you about, which is training and the role that training plays in Bell Partners' success. At the risk of just asking the obvious, what kinds of training do you feel are critical for teams in the field in order for them to be successful?
Well, I think the easy ones that everybody talks about is obviously the fair housing training, customer service training, maintenance training, all of those basic skills, the software training. But one of the things that we've also focused on is leadership training. We are an industry that focuses on the skills, but then we take someone that's a maintenance tech, for example, that knows how to fix everything. And we say, okay, now you're the maintenance manager. But we don't give them the tools to be a leader. And so we've been very focused, and we have a 3-part program on leadership. So for new managers, we have Spark. For mid-level managers, we have Ignite. And for senior managers, we have Tort. And there are different levels of leadership training to get people the skills and the tools that they need in addition to the technical skills. Those soft skills become critical as well. And it's something as an industry we have not done as much of because we're so focused on all the other things. Again, all of those pieces are important. One of the things we've also rolled out this year is training for our maintenance teams in a virtual reality versus just sitting them behind a desk. That's not the way that our guys train. They need the hands-on. And so virtual reality enables them, and interactive training enables them to actually work on a piece of equipment and see if they're doing it right. And so I think making sure that we're giving our teams the tools, particularly as we train. We've started doing some podcasts and vodcasts and for short little training for new technology that people can go back and rewatch. We're using AI tools as follow-up so that if you go to software training, then there's an AI tool as you go to use the software to say, do you need help with this? There's a bot right there to help you and answer questions. So I think we continue to evolve our training and we continue to fine tune it. And it always needs to be looked at and updated because things in our industry do change. And then, obviously all the legal training because we're so heavily regulated. And being in multiple states, you have to know what are the fair housing laws federally, but also locally. In some states now you have to do human trafficking training. In other states, harassment training. So there's all kinds of different requirements that we have to put into place in addition to into the skills training.
Yeah, we are one of the things that, again, outsiders may not understand about this industry is there is a fair amount of operational risk involved. Real legal liability in just operating buildings. It is not simply collecting rent. You just mentioned a couple of them, which is fair housing, but also whatever the local city, state, county, municipal codes may have to say about operations. How does especially when Bell Partners has such a diverse, geographically you're so dispersed, how do you stay on top of and manage operational risk?
We have a compliance department and a risk management department that help us with that are always looking at what are the new laws that are out there. We use the NAA lease largely because they keep it up to date in every state. So because, it's not just fair housing, which is federal, and then the local guidelines to fair housing, but you also have landlord tenant laws. So security deposit requirements, late notice requirements. And so having the NAA lease allows us to really feel comfortable that we have the most up-to-date information. But it is keeping track of employment law, dealing with the different requirements that are in each state from that standpoint and the training that they require. So it takes a lot, and it takes our risk management department that spends a lot of time looking at what are the new laws out there. And think about just with COVID, each state has had different requirements from whether you have to, in some states we have to do a temperature check every day on new employees coming in and report any cases. In other states, we don't have to do anything. So understanding what each state is requiring, our risk team spends a lot of time on that.
Yeah, and Bell Partners, given the size and scale that you have, are probably lucky to be able to have a department like that. How do you suppose, if you're speaking to some of the smaller operators that are maybe listening to this, companies that don't have the luxury of a risk management department, how is it even reasonable to expect them to be able to stay on top of all of this?
It's really tough. I mean, I don't think it's an easy thing to do, and I think that. Unfortunately, the states and local jurisdictions don't really care. They're going to hold you accountable. So this is where your apartment associations, outside resources, could be supplier partners. It could be local attorneys. It's going to be critical to have someone that can help you with that. And I think that one of the advantages of being smaller is you're probably geographically not as dispersed, although sometimes you are. But if you're in one region, then it's a little easier to manage that particular region versus being in multiple states. But I do think that there are resources out there. You have to find them, and you have to look for them. And
Yeah.
sometimes, in some cases, you may have to pay for them.
Yeah, and margins are thin enough. Sometimes that's hard to afford. Yeah, let's stay on the subject of operations because I know that interesting. You said this earlier, but I noted when I was looking that one of the core values at Bell is to prepare for the future today, which is interesting and probably quite different, I think, than the mindset of many operators. First of all, I want to ask what that means to you, but then I know some specific examples of things that's done. But what is that? How has that guided from a COO's perspective, Cindy? How has that guided your perspective of operations? That core value.
Well, I think preparing for the future today means you have to be looking forward. You can't just look back. You have to think about what are the next things that we are going to face? What are the things that we can do, now that we've rolled out virtual reality and we've rolled out AI tools? How do we fine tune that? How do we use that moving forward? What are the new tools that may be out there? How is that going to integrate? And recognizing you can't do everything, or I'm going to have my team's head spinning. They already think I move way too quickly, and sometimes I do. But it is balancing that with every new tool out there isn't what you're going to do. So preparing for the future doesn't mean that everything's going to be new all the time, but it means looking for those efficiencies and things that are going to be effective. So it may not be the newest, greatest thing today, but if there's something out there that's going to make the site teams more efficient and more effective at what they do, that's what we want to look at. And so I think that's how you prepare for the future. And it's planning. What else is coming along? Are there new things that we're going to look at? With growth, with what we do, we have properties going in and out all the time. So that's part of it as well, is planning for that and knowing how are we going to take care of our teams? Where are we going to move people? What are we going to do about growth? Are we preparing ourselves? Do we have enough bench strength to promote people from within? If we have promoted everybody from within because we grew particularly quickly one year, where are we going to look for people? How are we going to find those people? How do we integrate them into the culture? All of those things are preparing for the future.
Well, one of the things that we talked about Zoom and that sort of thing being thrust into that world thanks to COVID, but one of the other technologies that really came to the forefront in all of this was, you said earlier, virtual leasing. And so talk to us a little bit about what has Bell Partners deployed? What have you seen successfully deployed that has made an impact on marketing and leasing in that vein?
So we were fortunate. We were starting down this path of using some of the AI tools and the chat bots and the virtual leasing, but we were testing it. Well, we ended up in about a 60-day period rolling it all out all at once. So we rolled out a virtual or AI lead management tool. We've rolled out virtual leasing. We've rolled out self-guided tours. We've rolled out chat bots on all of our websites. And what we saw is that this enables us to meet our customer where they want to be. So we have people now that want to come and look at an apartment. We still have people that are not comfortable, and so they can look at it virtually. We have people that want to go look at the website at 2:00 in the morning and we're not there. Well, now someone can answer their questions for them. We can follow up automatically, which frees up our teams on site to spend more time in person with customers or on the phone with customers. So we've really looked at what are the things that are going to improve and enhance the customer experience, and particularly when some of it may be remote. And so how do you do that and still create that sense of community? Self-guided tours, tour schedulers on your website so that people can, again, meet the needs of your customer where they want to be met, not what is convenient for us.
And there's so much froth, I think, right now surrounding those kinds of services. I mean, you have just named off at least 5 different touch points from a marketing standpoint that you've adopted. If you could really just adopt one of those, if you were to give advice to someone, what has had the most impact on your ability to, and what will persist beyond, a return to being able to lease on site, what would that be? What was the most important thing to launch, you think?
I think it would be two of them. I don't think I can pick just one. I would say
Okay.
the chat bots on our websites, but the most impactful direct impact has been the AI tools for lead management, because we have truly been able to track and see about a 10% lift in leasing year over year, even in the midst of a pandemic, um, from those tools. And I think it's because it has freed up our teams to be able to deal with the real live customer again, whether that's by phone, whether that's in person. And the lead management is enabling our customers to talk to someone. They, in many cases, think they're talking to a live person, getting their questions answered when they need their questions answered, so they're not frustrated. And so I think it helps people make decisions. So I think those would be the two. Obviously, the virtual leasing, the self-guided tours, all of that is important, but those would be the two, I think, if you were choosing, that I would choose.
And just so we're clear, so you're talking like the LeaseHawk product, for example, that allows, they talk to a AI. They're not talking to a real person, but AI is responding and answering their leasing questions.
Responding and answering leasing questions, following up with them to see if they want to, that, they had their appointment. Is there anything else they need? So yes, it's those kind of tools. Meet a Lease is one that we use, but there are a number of them out there.
Yeah. So we just recently had a interview with somebody from one of those companies who was on, and I asked them the question. I said, given that it seems like the residents now are either on the spectrum of, hey, I really don't need to speak to anybody. I'm happy integrating with your AI, talking to your AI, making my own appointment, looking at a virtual 3D tour, selecting my apartment and leasing, right? Zero interaction from leasing agents. On the other end of the spectrum is, at the very minimum, I maybe I want to meet with somebody, but there's a lot of homework I'm going to be doing first, a lot of research I'm going to be doing first, so that my interaction with the leasing agent is far briefer than it used to be. Are we seeing a shift then away from this kind of role at properties? We always say, well, you say this all the time, Cindy. We say we sell ourselves first, right? People lease your community not because of the community, but because of the person. Are we disproving that at some level?
I don't think so, because you still have to interact with somebody when you move. Even though you're not interacting um, live, maybe there's still behind the scenes. It's still the way the property looks, and I do think that there's always going to be people that still want to talk to someone. So while I do think it has changed our business, I don't think, and this is always the fear of the leasing consultant is, oh, well, you're going to replace me with AI. No, I don't think that will ever replace. I think what it allow is stronger connections with the people that you do talk to live. Look, I'm old enough to remember when we got computers on properties, and everybody said, oh, we'll be able to eliminate staff because we're going to have software. And then it was, we're going to be able to eliminate staff because now we have all these other tools. Well, all that's done is make people want things faster. And clearly in today's world, that's part of the reason for the AI tools. It's because people want to use those tools late at night or early in the morning, or they're not in the same time zone. So I don't think it eliminates. What it may do is allow us to not be open, say, quote unquote, be open virtually on a Sunday versus being open 7 days a week. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I don't think we have enough information yet to know if that's going to work. I've certainly heard people say, oh, we'll be able to eliminate staff. Again, I never say never, but in my career, I've not seen a time when we've been able to eliminate staff. So for all of you site people out there, take a deep breath. I'm not sure that's going to really happen. But I do think it helps us to enhance the experience. And I do believe all you have to do is go look at all of which we haven't talked about, is all the social media and the review sites. When they go on those review sites, they're not talking about your website or your AI tools. They're talking about your people. Good or bad, they're talking about the people. So that people experience, whether it's when they first move in or once they get there, is still very critical to whether they like your community or not.
Yeah. And we know that people are 10 times more likely to share a bad experience than they are a good experience. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right.
Well, so obviously leasing has been significantly impacted and perhaps improved by technology. What other technological advances has Bell Partners adopted that you would consider now critical for the business outside of leasing?
And I wouldn't say that adopted. I think what we've seen is an increased use in the electronic payments. So you still,
Uh-huh.
several companies have gone to, only accepting electronic. We feel like my philosophy is I want to take your rent however you want to give it to me because I want your rent. But it clearly with the pandemic, we've seen much more adoption of the electronic payments. And I think communication with your residents through text and email, not that we weren't using it before, but I think you're seeing more of that as well. So again, it's multi-channels now versus just one channel of communication. And I do think that will continue. And the events in Dallas and Austin, where we have properties with the power being out for 4 days, you were
Oh my God.
you were dealing with people through Facebook, through text, because you had to use mobile devices. Nothing else was working, and that was only if you went out to your car and charged your mobile device to be able to make it work. So I do think that those communication forms, which were always there, we were forced to use more, and we saw more adoption of those tools. Um, and I would say the same thing is true on the maintenance side with mobile maintenance and seeing more adoption of mobile maintenance and getting teams more contactless, that they could, you don't have to go into the office to get your tickets. You can get it on your phone. You can, those kind of things. So I think we will continue to see those tools be used because what we found is that it makes us more efficient as well. And it goes back to what I said earlier, which is I'm looking for things that make us more effective and more efficient at what we do, because ultimately that makes us outperform, which is another one of our core values.
The deployment of maintenance and work orders in a mobile environment has taken a while to take hold, and I would guess my guess would be in part that's the folks that are performing that work in the field. I mean, these people, they turn wrenches, right? They're like work with their hands for a living. They tend to not be early adopters of technology. And then the second thing is that I've known from other operators that having a mobile phone policy has been tricky in the business because there's people's personal information, resident personal information ends up on those devices, and what happens if that person leaves? Is that all? Is Bell Partners solving all of that, you think? So it sounds like you're looking to do more of that in the field.
We're working on it, yes. And you hit on one that's become more of an issue, not only on the maintenance side, but even on the leasing side, which is data privacy. And we have access to a lot of data. And now they're, again, going back to what you were talking about with the risk, a lot of the states are now adopting data privacy laws, California, of course, being the first to do it. And how we hold people's data, who we give that data to, becomes really critical. And so finding the way, how do you do that on mobile maintenance without giving away, information? And a lot of that is because the resident is requesting the work. So it's coming in from them. And if they're using the mobile tool to do it, that gives us an ability to use it. But you do have to navigate a lot of legal issues when you're looking at a lot of these tools. And it's one of the things that as you look at whether it's leasing tools, whether it's management tools, maintenance tools, understanding the data privacy laws and what that requires and what could trip you up becomes critical as well.
Yeah. Yeah. More risk layered upon the business. I mean, the CCPA requirements ultimately should be probably the responsibility of whatever technology you're using, right? That's collecting that data. But you can't, you have to go into it with your eyes open as an operator, realize ultimately you get named in the lawsuit when there's a data privacy leak.
Exactly. It doesn't matter whether I'm indemnified by the supplier or the vendor. We're still going to get named, and it still means we have to do something. And so it's also reputational risk. So it is a twofold.
Oh, yeah.
It's a twofold issue, and it is. It's you've talked about it. Margins are thin, and yet everybody wants the manager to take on the risk and try all of these things, and so that's a constant balancing act of new technology or things that your clients may want you to try or do versus the risk to you as the operator. So it is, we spend a lot of time talking about what's going to work, what are the rules around it, and we are, we are fairly conservative. So we are not going to probably be the first adopter of everything out there because we want to make sure that we understand the risk that it puts us in and so we spend a lot of time doing a lot of research around those things before we roll something out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Boy, Cindy, so much stuff. I would love to just drill down forever, but I think you've shared some really great things today. Let me ask you to leave our students here with one last bit of advice, which is, what is it that you think people should know before, if they're considering getting into this as a business? What piece of advice would you give to them they should know before they embark on a career in multifamily?
Well, I tell people this all the time is, what I love about our business is you will never be bored. So you may love it or you may hate it, but you will never be bored. And if you are bored, you're doing something wrong because there is always something going on. And each day you can plan your day. But if you are somebody that has to plan and doesn't like a deviation from a plan, this is not the business for you, because I can plan my day and 5 minutes into it, the day can blow up because some new thing happens. And that is true whether you're on site, whether you're in a corporate role. But it's also what makes our job so interesting and exciting is because every day is different. And there's always something new, even though we may be doing the same things, quote unquote, over and over. There's always nuances to it. And there are always things that happen that make it different and make you have to stop and think about what are you going to do about this. So my advice is always make sure you love it, because to your point, no one is going to, it's a tough business and very rarely do people tell you what a great job you're doing. Most of the time they're going to tell you what's going wrong. So you have to really love it and you really have to see the tangible results yourself. Each individual in multifamily makes a difference. And you need to know that and be prepared for that. But understand it's a constant juggling act, which again, that's what I love about it. And I love the people aspect of it. But if that is not what you like, this is probably not the career for you.
Right. Yeah. Never be bored is sometimes code for complete and utter chaos. But you already have to be prepared for that. Well, Cindy, so much. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing some of your insights, especially somebody who's been doing this at a high level for so long. It's really valuable for folks to hear all this, and wish you luck on Bell Partners' continued expansion into some of your states. I know you're seeking to grow in those areas where you already have portfolios. Is there anything, if people are interested in working for Bell Partners or learning more about the company, where would they go for more information?
They can go to bellpartnersinc.com, which is our website, and we have a jobs page. We also have information about the company. So that's definitely where I would go to look. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And yes, we are looking to expand out west in all of our markets, but we are definitely looking to expand further in the west. So feel free to go to the website and you'll be able to find us.
Great. Well, maybe sometime we can do this again and dig more into some of these into the chaos of on-site operations, because there's lots to talk about there. Thanks so much. I appreciate you being with us today, Cindy. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in today's class here at the Apartment Academy. If you've enjoyed these podcasts and you feel like your management company could use a little advice from some of the professors here, then go to our website, apartmentacademy.com, and click Help Me. We'll send you a questionnaire and provide individualized responses to your answers at no charge that we think you can immediately deploy to improve apartment operations. Until next time, class is dismissed.